Welcome to the Brew Crew Review Podcast, the show by fans for fans of your Milwaukee Brewers.
All right, Brewer fans, welcome to the Brew Crew Review Podcast. My name is Craig. I'm here with my co-host Vince. Vince, how are things?
Things are good, Craig. How are things with you?
That's good. All right, the holidays are coming up upon us, and the hot stove season will be here soon. Some exciting Brewer news this week. The Brewers did extend a qualifying offer to Brandon Woodruff after they turned down team option. That was part of the last contract. And I think most Brewer fans had assumed that Woody was probably as good as gone. Definitely not, probably would not be accepting the qualifying offer and being looking for possibly like a 3-year contract from another team. Obviously, myself as a longtime Woody fan had some fear that maybe he would sign with the Mets or Cubs, as there was like the Stearns connection, the Council connection, all that stuff, and those guys willing to spend money, obviously. And of course, as you see, the Cubs have done a poach start, throwaway pitchers or whatever. Obviously, I wouldn't qualify Woody as that, but they've, you didn't want to see that happen. So a little bit of surprising and shocking news to me, and I guess maybe not to you, Vince, but Brandon Woodruff is coming back to be a Milwaukee Brewer once again as he accepted the qualifying offer. 22.025 million, I believe, is the contract for a 1-year deal.
Yep.
And happy to have him back in the 2026 Milwaukee Brewers. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I love it, and I don't mean to brag, but yeah, I did actually call this on our last podcast. So we'll do one little quick victory lap on that one. But yeah, it was a pleasant surprise in a way too. I think that it made sense from both sides. I still think that Brandon Woodruff wanted to have at least a season of truly healthy. Hopefully, it's going to be a full season of healthy pitching. Another prove it type of deal, and there's still some uncertainty I think around what the CBA might look like going into 2027 as well. So this makes sense for both sides. This is a contract that I think is, it is the highest single year salary of any Brewers pitcher in the history of the Brewers franchise. So it certainly isn't an unfair deal from Woody's perspective. He may have left, some money on the table in the sense that he's obviously not going to, get 3 years worth of money in a 1-year contract. But I think it makes a ton of sense. He's going to be pitching in a place that he knows well, that he's comfortable. He doesn't have to worry about, testing free agency, and that can often take months, as you know, Craig, just as players test the market. And that would have been a new experience for him as well, considering he had signed that 2-year extension after his injury in 2023 to remain in Milwaukee at that point as well. So I think it's great. I think it's good for both sides. And the Brewers get, a top of the rotation arm who, when he's healthy, is all-star ace level caliber to pair with Freddie Peralta.
Absolutely. So I was surprised by the news in spite of your prediction. I thought he'd get a 3-year deal from someone else, and I know most people at MLB Trade Rumors were the writers there were thinking the same thing, but I didn't think it was totally out of the realm of possibility. I guess there's never a good time to get injured if you're a player, but there's no other way to slice it than over the last couple of years, Brandon Woodruff has had some really unfortunately timed injuries for both himself and for the Milwaukee Brewers ball club. And the Brewers did offer him this latest contract just 2 seasons ago, where it had the 2-year with a mutual option and all that stuff, while he was down and out injured. And I think that olive branch that they basically extended to him to give him some stability. I think that him, accepting this qualifying offer has something to do with a little bit of loyalty, not only to the team, but also some goodwill that was possibly created by the Brewers. Doing that, you could also try to spin it as the fact that you could tell there was disappointment, and especially last year when the timing of Woody going down, and this team was on an incredible run to the best team in baseball heading in the playoffs, and all of a sudden he could not be part of that. There were some hopes that maybe it could have come back and we would have went further in the playoffs. It just did not happen. So I guess there's nothing else better than getting the band back together, because the 2025 Brewers, which I consider a pretty incredible team, is by and large all coming back in 2026 at this point. We can talk about a couple of the free agents that probably won't be coming back. Not for sure, not. But I mean, Reese Hoskins is a free agent. Jose Quintana is a free agent. Eric Fetty. There might be one or two other minor guy.
Danny Jansen's a
Oh,
free
Danny
agent.
Jansen. Yeah. So I mean, and I think out of all those listed, I think Danny Jansen might be the best possible candidate to still come back as a backup catcher, but to obviously to William Contreras. But for the most part, I mean, those are not key members. No offense to Jose Quintana, who definitely was, but I think our pitching depth and the health now, and the emergence of Mizorowski and a couple of younger arms, I think, make Jose Quintana and his nice cheap deal he signed with us last season, not a necessity, even though, again, I'm sure having him back wouldn't be the worst thing in the world either. So you just never know. But I mean, just focusing here on Woodruff, I mean, I got pretty fired up about it just because the fact I just thought it was already a foregone conclusion that most likely it was not. I really felt that our team was going to gamble on him. When he did pitch last season, he showed that his diminished velocity. In spite of that, he still pitched incredibly well. And really
Yeah, but I
showed.
do want to make it clear too. I don't think that I do agree that Woodruff has loyalty to the Brewers for sure. But I don't want it to be seen as just Woodruff, totally just foregoing a ton of money. I mean, he's getting a very good, annual salary. It's over $22 million. He also received a $10 million buyout. So the Brewers have committed $32 million to Brandon Woodruff, who pitched 12 games last year. So just, again, to be clear, I love Brandon Woodruff. I'm very excited for him to come back, and I'm actually very hopeful that he can, hopefully remain healthy for most of the year at least. But it's not as though he was a lock to get a multi-year deal. I know what MLB trade rumors and our colleagues there predicted, but this is a guy who's pitched 12 games in the last, 2 seasons. So it wasn't like a foregone conclusion, and who's also missed, key playoff moments for the team, both of those years too. So I just wanted to kind of remind our listeners of that too. And it's a two-way street. I think both sides have been, engaged in a very healthy relationship. And I think that that's kind of what led to the acceptance of that deal. But I don't think it was like a charity case on either side.
No, and I mean, in fact, all the way to the point of, I think some Brewer fans are wondering with that price tag of 22 million that they thought they were going to maybe be able to allocate elsewhere in free agency, whether or not this decision by Brandon Woodruff upended any of their offseason plans. I know Cubs fans, judging by what they're doing online, when showed accepted his qualifying offer for the Cubs, I think that they were a little bit not as happy as Brewer fans are about our pitching, our pitcher's decision, I guess. So I mean, you don't think that this signing, obviously, or this deal will prevent the Brewers from, foregoing their offseason plans?
No, I don't. I mean, it certainly shouldn't. Mark Giannatio has, he's made it clear the Brewers have spent significantly more on payroll a couple seasons ago than they did last year. And it just happens that we have quite a young team. I think that the Brewers have the capability, and I always have believed that the Brewers have the capability of spending significantly more on player payroll in some years. And this has been said by the franchise as well. Some years it's wise to spend more money, and some years it's not. But I would think that, many of those years where the Brewers were not spending as much money out of the last 10, I think that hopefully they were putting some money aside, and I assume that they were for years like 2026 should be, which in my opinion is a go for it all type of year. I mean, this was a team that made it to the NLCS just last month. This is a team that has a ton of talent. This is a team who has a very deep starting rotation, which is what any playoff team needs. This is also a team, though, that I think in order to advance in the playoffs needs to add at least a power bat. And I don't think that the Brewers can go into 2026 leaving this roster just as is and expect us to do better than last year, because we did not go further than the NLCS last year. And I think in order to make that next step into the World Series, you have to add some serious thumb to the lineup. Otherwise, it's just going to be the same old, same old. This is the time for the Brewers to spend some money and to step up. And whether that means that you acquire a power hitter in a trade or through free agency, whatever it is, there has to be some flexibility in the front office to be willing to allocate resources towards that. I understand that going into 2024, the team did that with Reese Hoskins, and I think many would say it didn't really work out. I have said this on this podcast before. I think that even the Rhys Hoskins signing was an example of the Brewers trying to, get bargain instead of just allocate what resources it would probably take to get a power bat, and it didn't work out with Rhys to the extent that the Brewers probably hoped. I do think, though, that this time the Brewers cannot be cheap. The Brewers have to go out and spend money on a power bat. I will say that until they do it every episode, until it's done. And I'm not saying that we necessarily need to go out and sign Pete Alonso, although that would be really nice. But I do think that the Brewers need to invest some resources into getting a bat that has 30-plus home run potential and plant that right in the middle of that lineup.
No, and backing up to your overall assessment that 2026 is a year to go all in. Again, it's this regime's philosophy to not necessarily do such a thing, to always stay competitive, keep getting bites at the apple, to keep turning over the roster, being smart about every move they make. So in spite of all that, backing up just a little bit before this Woodruff signing, I think the rest of baseball fans and GMs across the league were actually pretty hopeful that Freddie Peralta was going to be on the trade block too, because again, this is the Brewers' MO. It's his last year. He's a super cheap on an 8-year contract, so we'd have a ton of value trade-wise for the Milwaukee Brewers. Was it your belief, first of all, before this deal, that Freddie Peralta was indeed going to be on the block, or at least be listened to, offers on him listened to, and then after this deal, do you now think it's even more likely that he'll be traded or not? I guess what are your thoughts on how this impacts Freddie Peralta's future with the Milwaukee Brewers?
I think it would be very unwise to trade Freddie Peralta unless you're blown away by a package that could also help next year's team. So you never say never on anybody. I would never shut the door on that, but I also think that the Brewers are a much, much better team by having Freddie Peralta and Brandon Woodruff at the top of the rotation. It's not like Freddie's salary is so much that the Brewers can't afford to pay it. He's making just north of $8 million for 2026 on a very team-friendly deal. He's the heart and soul of that clubhouse by many accounts, as we've seen when we've had our press passes, Craig. I think having that 1-2 punch and then all the great complementary pieces of younger guys like Mizorowski and Priester and Chad Patrick and Logan Henderson, and you can go through a list of 8 or 9 guys, as we did in our pre-production meeting, that are going to fill out that rotation in some way, shape, or form over the course of the next year, is a huge strength for the Brewers. But we have a lot of young guys who aren't necessarily proven yet, and I think that the veteran presence of Peralta at the top of that rotation is absolutely essential, especially given Woody's injury history. I mean, and again, I'm not ragging on Brandon Woodruff. I love the guy. He's pitched 12 games in 2 years. So we can't afford to bank on the fact that he's going to make, 40 starts next year or whatever it is. Like, how many starts, let me ask Scotty Dinter, how many starts did Freddie make last year? He made 33 starts last season. That's irreplaceable. You can't just expect one of the young guys to step into that role necessarily, at least not without another year of seasoning and another year of development. And even so, every rotation, from any team in baseball, it's going to have injuries, let alone the Brewers rotation, which has a lot of question marks just on the injury front. And I know that we know that the talent is there, but again, I think that when your headliners are Woodruff and Peralta, you've got to keep them both because of Woodruff's injury history.
Yeah, that's an awesome assessment and very much spot on as far as what I believe. I believe that Freddie Peralta was not going to be traded regardless of this Woodruff's accepting of the qualifying offer. Oh, and now I think it's even more so likely that he's not, because like you said, I think now it's time to go all in. If you look at a rotation, it's really, really strong right now. I mean, if you've got, a couple of years from now, Jacob Mizorowski will probably be our number 1 starter. But now in 2026, as he's showing some growth here during the season, made the All-Star team, obviously looked controversially, but he really looked great in the playoffs. And I think he's ready to make the next step going forward and have another year where he makes a tremendous amount of growth. And why not do that as a number 3 starter rather than a number 1? And that's where he's going to be able to be at. 3 or 4, wherever you want to slot. Pretty sure, I guess it doesn't really matter. He's not going to have to lead this rotation going into 2026. So I think you have to keep Peralta and Woody as your 1-2. Then you've got Mizorowski. Then you've got Priester, who had an incredible year, and I think that the Brewers have high hopes for him going forward as a great pitcher. That's a very solid top 4 starters. And then if you want a guy I know you absolutely love, Chad Patrick, penciling as a number 5.
Yep.
That's amazing. So, and then now it pushes all the other younger guys who I guess are either bouncing back for injury or, kind of are waiting their turn back to AAA Nashville now, and it's a pretty nice list. I mean, you've got obviously Logan Henderson ready to go. You've got Robert Gasser returned from injury last year. Both of them at AAA, and then you've got let's not forget Tobias Myers. DL Hall could possibly be a
DL
starter at
Hall.
AAA, or he
Yep.
could be part of our long relief crew. I mean, so that's a pretty deep
That's
rotation. The five I mentioned plus four at AAA, and again, those
that
guys,
that's not even counting guys like Coleman Crow, Craig, who just got added to
yeah,
the 40-man roster, who many think has top of the rotation upside talent, who's also dealt with some injuries and maybe hasn't been able to have all the opportunities to prove it. But didn't even mention Carlos Rodriguez, who I know his star is kind of dimmed a little bit, but who at one time was
still
heralded
though,
as
yeah.
as a fairly high-ranking prospect for the Brewers. So we have a ton of depth, and we haven't even mentioned Aaron Ashby, who I think for good reason has turned into like this, Swiss Army knife lefty weapon out of the bullpen, and that's probably where he's most valuable for this team. But between him and DL Hall, either one of those guys could start, and both have started in the big leagues before too.
Yeah, I think just the way that the Ashby was used with aplomb in the playoffs leads me to believe the Brewers love him in that role, and that he'll probably stay there, especially given now the unbelievable
Yeah,
depth. Uh, Rather than
yeah,
stretch him back out, it just seems kind of silly that at least one of him and or D Hall, if not both, had to be bullpen. I think that they're more comfortable with Ashby's what he's shown to keep him there. And would surprise me if DL Hall has some kind of multi-inning reliever role too. And those guys are super valuable to 2025 Brewers, and I think they will be for 2026 Brewers too. But yeah, the incredible
yeah,
depth, and now it gives the Brewers the luxury of having those guys get those other guys I mentioned, those beyond the fifth starters, beyond the Chad Patrick young starters, to get as much seasoning as they need at AAA. I mean, even if they're ready to go, they're on call at the ready in case of any injury developments. And then you kind of have them sort themselves out at AAA, and whoever has the best season at AAA maybe gets to fill in the holes that'll be created after 2026 in rotation when, knock on wood, most likely we're going to be losing Woodruff and Peralta almost for sure beyond 2026. So those two, that'll open up two spots in rotation for whoever the next two guys are the most deserving of it, so to speak. And we'll still have some depth
yeah.
beyond that. So it's
Yeah, and I
exciting.
really like that point about not pressuring Mizorowski. This guy has got the stuff to be a future ace, but as it currently stands, and I know we talked about this in our pre-production meeting, Mizorowski, was 5-3. We had a 5-3 record last year with a ERA over 4. I think he's going to end up being an ace. I think he's got the stuff for it. I think he's got the mental acuity to do it. That being said, you've got some wiggle room here to let him grow and continue to development. And Chad Patrick, he posted a 3.53 ERA in 27 games last year, including 23 starts. It's pretty incredible that you've got those guys at the back end of your rotation, essentially. I don't think the order matters a ton, except for maybe your top of the rotation, but I think it's probably Quinn Priester is my number 3 going into the year, just because he did have that consistency last year. Chad Patrick did when he was up, but he spent a considerable amount of time in the minors, and Mizorowski, I think, still is kind of filling out what his potential is going to be. So I really like that rotation overall with those 5 names. Again, I don't really care about the order. And I think, as you pointed out, we have a ton of depth that we can use either in the bullpen or in AAA when injuries invariably rise. I mean, no team is going to survive an entire season where their starting rotation is able to make every start. So we know that going into it. I think a couple of years ago we were talking about our pitching depth, and we ended up using like Jason Alexander made a ton of starts, even though we thought that we had this very loaded at that time, system. So I think that that's something that the Brewers are very mindful of, and I'm sure that they're willing to keep a lot of this depth around. That being said, we could also see perhaps we acquire a bat by using some of this pitching depth in a trade as well. So
Yeah,
that's
and
something
I
I'm sure we'll
think
talk
that
about.
that's a nice thing about how
Sure.
well these guys showed themselves last year. The shining example of that would probably be Logan Henderson. He did great at AAA. He did great at the major league level in the short time that he was able to do that. I think that he really put himself on other GM's radars as far as like, hey, I would love to put this guy in a rotation. I'd love to acquire him, of course. And so that begs the question. Obviously, I agree that now with Woodruff signing, you try to look at what the Brewers have to do this offseason, what's all on their checklist. And I think adding the offense is number one and might be the only real thing, adding one big bat somehow to the offense. looking at our
Yeah.
track record and Antonisio's track record, I mean, it's going to be one of two things. We're going to sign a big free agent bat, or we're going to trade for a big free agent bat. I mean, I should say there's a third option as we do neither of those things and roll with the guys that we did
Yeah.
because that's what we
That's
did.
typically typically it's the third option of doing nothing. I was going to say, which is the one that would frustrate me personally the most this offseason.
I mean, that's
That
what
would
we
just
did at the trade
frustrate me.
deadline, and then we paid the price for it, in my opinion, during the second round of the playoffs because our bats all went silent against the Dodgers. And again, we had the opportunity to use our unbelievable farm system depth to bring in a bat, even if it was a rental, if we would chose to do so. Now we didn't, and we got bounced. We didn't make it as far as we needed to. So I mean, this year needs to be different, and why not try to target? So in my opinion, yeah, by default, it's the third option. But let's just look at it realistically. If we're going to bring in a
Yeah.
bat, are we really going to sign outside of a buy low guy like another Reese Hoskins option? We're not going to sign a bat to a 4, 5, 6 year contract. It'll be a 1 year deal or 2 years tops. And so that's not going to bring in a quality bat that we need. So what we really need to do is try to possibly package our unbelievable farm depth, our rotation depth, and not only that, but even our offensive depth. I mean, in my mind, Garrett Mitchell is expendable. And if you'd rather keep him, I think that some other teams would covet as a starter Isaac Collins or Blake Perkins. So I mean, you have some outfield
Well,
depth in
the
my
issue though
opinion.
is that Garrett Mitchell doesn't have any trade value probably right now. I mean, the guy missed
Well, it's
all but
definitely
a
low,
month,
but I wouldn't
two
say
months
no
total.
trade value because I think that I
Yeah.
mean, he was a former first round pick that even fell in
Yeah.
the draft. So I think that, and he's shown enough when he has played at major league level that I think a rebuilding club would love to add him. So, but with that being said, it's obviously a muted trade value at this time. So obviously, it's not the smartest time to move him. But with that being said, if
Yeah.
you can bring in a
Mitchell hit
more
206 last year, man. I just don't see it. I think I like Mitchell personally. I actually think I probably like him more than most. But yeah,
probably
I
more
know
than
you don't
me.
like WAR, but he had a 0 WAR. Last year he had 206. I mean, so he's literally by WAR at least he has no value at all,
Well, and
and
he
hit no
hardly
home runs
played.
last
I
year.
mean, what did he only play like a month before he got injured or whatever? So I mean, that's a kind of
Yeah,
a small sample.
25 games. 25 games. It's definitely a small sample, no question about it. But lifetime, he's a 254 hitter, but he's played 141 games over the course of 4 seasons at this point. I mean, it's
Yeah, I mean
pretty
that's
atrocious.
what I would. His
His
trade
hit
value is
total,
down
he's
just
got his
because of how
highest.
injury prone he is. Also, yeah.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm
But
saying. He's got 50 hits at most in any season,
But a
which was
young, controllable
2024.
player that has great defense, power, and speed is definitely going to have some trade value, even if it is a little bit down. So I guess what I'm getting at is I feel the Brewers could put together an unbelievable package that would be attractive to a rebuilding team that could be headlined by a Logan. Well, it actually could be headlined by any pitcher of their choosing. If there's whether it be Tobias Myers, DL Hall. Um, Robert Gasser or Logan Henderson. I think Logan Henderson has got the most value out of those and most attractive to our team. But they could have their choice of a young starting pitcher. They could have their a young, about to enter his prime, albeit injury prone center fielder in Garrett Mitchell, and they could probably have their pick of any of our top 20 prospects outside of like someone like Jesus Mate or Cooper Pratt, you could pick two of our prospects. That's an unbelievable package that we should be able to bring in not only just a rental, but a controllable young player from another team. Who that player is, maybe we'll have to identify on future podcasts. But I'm just saying that I think that's the more likely scenario than the Brewers signing like a bat to a 4 year contract. I mean, we're not getting Kyle Tucker. We're not even getting a Kyle Schwarber or someone like that. I mean, if it would have to be a bargain-ish, like coming back from an injury. Like, and again, some of those names out there, I'm just not going to want. I want no part of Nick Castellanos. We'd have to look at the
Yeah.
free agent list, but there's really I mean, it's like we'll see, But it is exciting that Brandon Woodruff is back, and we've got a lot of options going in the offseason as far as whether or not we're going to trade to improve the club, whether or not we're going to sign more free agents. But again, the farm system is great right now, and albeit I would like to hold on to the really high ceiling guys like Mate and Pratt, but I mean, for the most part, there's a lot of other really good, in my opinion, future major league players. In fact, Josh.
Well, Pena too, probably.
Yeah, Pena is
Not
also
just
very high
Pratt.
ceiling. So you could add him in that. He's a top 20 prospect in all of baseball going into this offseason as well.
Yeah.
Mott is generally
Well,
consensus top
the thing
five.
with
So
Cooper Pratt might be up in the big leagues sooner than rather than later too. We still have to talk about shortstop, and we can do that today if you want. But to me, Joey Ortiz's defense is some of the best up the middle defense that I've seen. I think that we need to really think seriously though about how we can, replace that with the black hole in the lineup when he comes to the plate. And maybe that's through Joey Ortiz improving too. I don't know, but that is definitely something that I think the Brewers front office has to seriously be considering, especially given the amount of shortstops in our system right now. We have so many guys that can play shortstop in our system that are on their way that Joey has to have kind of a short leash. And I don't know if he's potentially part of trade discussions with other teams as well, but that's something that my guess is crossed the mind of the Brewers front office.
absolutely. And again, it's very difficult to not only identify, but actually complete a trade for a young, high upside shortstop because teams that have those type of players do not want to give them up for absolutely, unless it's for the moon. And so that's going to be a difficult lift. But I mean, it's nice that we have some flexibility with guys that currently have in the infield that can play multiple positions. Obviously, Durbin can play third and second. Trang has shown he can play second and short. We had some options, again, to identify a certain player to bring in to kind of replace Joey Ortiz at this point. And again, I'm not the only one saying that. Like, I think, in spite of his great defense, I feel like they waited enough on his bat that we can't really have that much of a black hole in a championship caliber team's lineup. So they have to consider some
Yeah.
other options. Whether or not any good ones come about, I guess we'll have to find out as the exciting hot stove season marches on here in 2020 as we end up 2025 going in 2026. Again, if you're not fired up as a Brewer fan going into this next year, I don't know, you've obviously all lived through some pretty down years, unless you're the younger kids like my nephew and my son, I guess, that really don't even know any Brewers baseball that hasn't been winning baseball, which is something that, I mean, obviously my nephew's 13 and my son's 11, but I mean, for the most part, their entire life, all they can remember since they've been 5 years old, the Brewers have been making the playoffs every year. So it's pretty exciting.
That's amazing when you think back to like your childhood or my childhood, 80s and 90s kids. Like I'm like blown away still by even making the playoffs or even being over 500 still some years. It still is a shock. So this has been a very fun era of Brewers baseball. I think, we'll all look back fondly, obviously, over these years, starting really in 2011 in many ways. But, it's been a really fun era of Brewers baseball. One name that I do think could be kind of interesting, Adolis Garcia from the Rangers, I think, is on the block. He could be somebody that the Brewers might want to take a look at. I don't think he would cost a ton, actually, in a trade. Do you like Garcia? Is that a potential bat that the Brewers should target? I know he had a bit of a down year last year.
I mean, he did have a down year. I mean, I like him as a player, but I just don't know, like, if he fits the Brewers profile, like Arnold's profile, so to speak, as much. But no, I do like him as a player. I don't feel that I feel like we've seen the best, and when I say we, the MLB has seen the best of Aldoris Garcia, and I think that he's more now going to take a downturn in his career. Why I think that, I don't know, but that's just the impression I get. So I'd rather than a proven guy like that that's about to do a downturn, I'd almost rather target a younger player that we haven't seen the best of yet, and I think would be a better fit financially also of the Brewers. So if you want to stick with the Rangers, and a guy I really would like to target would be Josh Young. Now the Rangers have Jake Burger to play third base, and Young has been kind of like their version of Garrett Mitchell, which is a player that has always been injured and is starting to get frustrated. Maybe it's a good change of scenery. Maybe we can put together a package where we get Adolis Garcia and Josh Young, and we give them Garrett Mitchell, Logan Henderson, a couple of like two or three prospects. That sounds like a perfect match, actually. But that bring in a couple.
Yeah, I don't know. That might be kind of a high price to pay. Young, you've always been higher on Young than me. To me, he's a 250 hitter. He's got some power, and I'll wait for Scotty.
I think he's got 30 home run power that he just hasn't developed into yet, personally, but.
Yeah, last year, I just got his notes. He played 131 games last year, 14 home runs. The 131 games marked the most he's played it in his career. So not a ton of power from that perspective. He had 61 RBIs, hit just over two. He had 251, 294 OBP. Ton of strikeouts, 129 strikeouts against 27 walks,
You want to
similar to
ask Scott's
Garcia.
interns how old he is? I think he's probably around 26 and about to enter his prime. So I really feel like those
He's
numbers.
20. Yeah, he's 28.
Oh, he's 28, right? Okay, yeah. So again, he'd
I'm
be
sorry, he's 27 now. He'll be 28 before the season, so he's
okay.
entering his age 28 season. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, how old is Mitchell? I think Mitchell's right around that same age too. So that's why I really like that comp between him and Mitchell because again, I think both fan bases and GMs are getting a little frustrated with each of those players, and I feel like we could use a third baseman with power over an outfielder with Mitchell's profile.
Mitchell is 26.
Okay, so a little bit younger. So yeah, that's interesting. But yeah, to get Adolis Garcia would be a nice. I mean, I would think that a young arm like one of our younger AAA arms would probably be able to land Adolis Garcia. So that's yeah, that's definitely a name that I wouldn't mind adding. I think he also has a little bit of flair to him that could really add to the team. So yeah, obviously.
Former Gold Glover too. I was a little bit surprised to see that, but I forgot that he had won a Gold Glove in 2023. And I do think that we should think about where on the diamond would you want to see us add the bigger bat? That's kind of a question I've been toying around with. I mean, I certainly think that we could move Caleb Durbin. I liked your idea on I think our last podcast or two podcasts ago, but the idea of adding or moving Caleb Durbin to even second base, and then Bryce Terang to shortstop, and then you bring in a third baseman. I mean, we can be a little bit flexible just because the Brewers have guys that do have some positional, variety, the guys that can play all over the field. So, is it in the outfield? And then you've got, some sort of platoon. Does Sal Frelick move to the infield? I mean, I wouldn't necessarily advocate that because he's a Gold Glove winning outfielder, but maybe that's something that we think about. Is is Yelich just a DH? I kind of think of him as more of just a DH at this point, even though he played in, a good handful of games last year in the outfield. So where would you think, what positionally the Brewers should be looking to add a bat?
Well, I mean, if you look at their outfield, I think Frelick's staying in the outfield at this point, whether it's center or right, I'm not sure. But I mean, obviously, Churio will be out there, Frelick, and
Mitchell,
Garrett
maybe?
Mitchell, assuming he's still a
Yeah.
Brewer. So, I mean, and then you also have Yelich for depth and then for DH spots. So that doesn't really give you much.
And you've
I
got,
mean,
and you've got Perkins and Collins for depth too.
yeah. Oh, yeah. And again, I kind of view those guys as fourth or fifth outfielders, but also possible trade
Yeah.
chips. So I think they would be starters on a lot of like a third of the teams in the league, to be quite honest with you. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Agreed.
so I guess if we were to get Adolis Garcia, we'd probably have to move someone like Mitchell to make room for him almost because I mean, yeah. So I don't mind that. I guess it depends on who we have to
Unless
move.
Mitchell's your fourth outfielder, Mitchell could be your fourth outfielder, and then
I
you would
think his
have either
upside's too
Perkins
high
or
to leave him
Collins.
as a fourth outfielder. I think that you either got to move him or start him every day when it comes to Mitchell. I just think his talent level is higher than a Collins or a Perkins. And so I think that he needs
Yeah.
every day at bats, especially after, missing so much time with injury. I really don't think he could fill a bench role. I mean, it's just would be
Yeah.
bad for his own career development and reaching any type of potential that he still has untapped, in my opinion. But
Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah.
no, I mean, I guess I don't. I think it's like we have such the way that the roster is built is with such great flexibility. I think the Brewers can almost identify someone from any position and make the rest work. I think the one problematic spot might actually be a first base only profile because, well, but then again, if it's someone with a lot of team control, we could probably just try to make that work and figure out because if we don't have Andrew Vaughn beyond this year arbitration wise, so I think that yeah, so obviously.
So you're telling me there's a chance that we're signing Pete Alonso?
Yeah, I
And
think
then
the first. I think first base
then you
is.
put Vaughn. Then you've got Vaughn as your DH. You never know. It could
I mean, we
happen.
could trade Vaughn at arguably peak
Good.
value. I don't know if that would be a fan favorite move, but I mean, if you brought in Pete Alonso, I don't think anyone would complain too much. So I guess, like I
No.
said, we have the flexibility to make other moves to make room for whatever bat we want to identify. I trust our front office, as you know, well enough to identify whatever player they want to target that they could think help this ball club, and then shuffle other pieces around as need be. And that's kind of the brilliance of the way the roster has been constructed, and not only that, but the entire organization has been constructed very similar to the old Tampa Bay Rays when really they have a lot of guys that can move around to different positions, and the versatility is really um, pretty exciting. Now, two guys.
Well, let's hope that we actually win one, unlike the Tampa Bay Rays, because that is the key at the end of the day. And I am glad to hear you say that you trust the front office, because previous iterations of Craig would definitely not trust the front office. The deadline moves, the lack of movement in the winter. So it's maybe this is maybe turning over a new leaf for you, Craigers.
Well, I mean, a lot of for the last how long has Ananasio been? I think he's been the owner for 20 years.
2005, yeah, I think it was
Four or
2005.
five he
Pretty
came in.
sure.
Yeah, so I mean, it's been like 20
Yeah.
seasons of that guy. Um, I mean, over 20 seasons, that's a pretty long track record to prove that you're not going to be a big spender, and he just not.
No, he's not.
To his credit, he's identified the absolute perfect GMs, and I'll say that just giving David Stern some props. But between David Stearns and Arnold, they've been able to do great with what they've had to work with.
And
I,
Doug Melvin. Let's not short our
of
original
course, yes, yes,
Atanasio
Doug Melvin, yeah,
GM hire. I think that Atanasio brought him in right away to replace dynamic Dean Taylor, that was been a Wendy Seelig pre-hire.
yeah, no, and again, just like Doug Melvin wanted to add CC Sabathia his salary at the time via trade in 2008, and again, that was a younger Mark Antonacci at that time. But I mean, the bottom line is, I think if our GM goes and asks, say, hey, I need this guy, this is the piece that we need to get us over the hump. I don't think Mark Antonacci is going to say, no, we're already at our budget. It's because I think he looks at it not year by year. Like some years, our payroll will be lower, like last year, and then that will give us flexibility, which is a key word for our entire organization, in my opinion, flexibility to go over budget on a year that we would need to add a key piece. And I think that Antonacci is a smart businessman like that. And with that being said, he's not someone, what's the old saying for people that have plenty of money and that they didn't get rich by writing checks. And Mark Antonacci is a poster boy
Right.
for that.
That's right.
So
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. He's like the character, if you've read the book The Millionaire Next Door, and typically they, are not the one driving the fanciest car in the neighborhood. That's the mindset. It's like you've built yourself a life without having those types of needless expenses, while spending smartly on the things that you do need to invest in order to build wealth. And I think that that's one of the things that, if I could change one thing, it would be that you have to at times take the opportunity to invest wisely in a bold, dramatic move. And I think that he's done that at some points in his ownership group. You mentioned the CC Sabathia trade, and he even made a free agent offer to CC after that 2008 season, and wasn't as high as the Yankees, but I give him credit for trying. And I think, like the Greinke trade going into 2011, like there have been certain examples where the Brewers front office has realized that, yes, the bite at the apple that offended our colleague Scott to the point that it did is probably a good approach, honestly, except you also have to take a bigger bite once in a while to, like, eat the whole apple sometime. Grab it all, do what you
well, there you go. I mean,
like,
having sustained success,
expand your jawline, whatever you need to do to fit the whole damn apple in your mouth. Like, to me, 2026, 2027, like 2026 is really the year to do that. I really think that this window has got to be viewed as such that, with the pitching that we have and the offense that we could have, the tools that we have in our offense are awesome. I love the way that we play ball. I hate that we have to choose at times between being a team of woodpeckers versus a team that has some power, which the Brewers tried to do in like 08 and 11 and even like 2021, 2022. I think that we can be both. Like, why would you not try to be both? Like, we need to infuse some power in this lineup, to me. And I still think that you still have that woodpecker mentality, except you had a huge bat. Like, to me, that is the simple, it's not a simple solution, but that is absolutely the solution, and it's vital for next year.
Absolutely. And again, I just want to point out to our listeners that going all in 2026 has very little to do, in my opinion, for the pending CBA agreement. There is a little factor in there, but for the most part, I feel that 2026 would be the year to go all in if you're the Milwaukee Brewers,
Yep.
regardless of that, because of the fact that, again, you know right now that you're bringing back Woody and Freddie for their last year. This is a time to strike. You've got so much talent on this club. In my opinion, the most talent that we've had since the early 80s on this club right now, top to bottom. And not only that, but the organization. Our farm system is unbelievable right now, and it's pretty exciting. So one other thing, again, back to Antanasio for a second here before we wrap up this podcast, is he didn't get rich by writing checks. There's that phrase. He's also a little bit of penny pitchers. Now, I want to Scott's interns just point out to me, and also I got a text from Tom C. TC
Tom,
uh, that
that's our anonymous source, Craig. Our anonymous source, Tom Carter. He wasn't taking my calls for the last week, so I wasn't sure what was up since our last podcast. But yeah, because I pointed out that my inside knowledge about Woodruff was because of the inside information I received from Tom Carter.
Yeah, so thank you, TC. Again, try not to say first and last name, not necessary. But anyway, a certain someone gave me this information that we actually have quite a few listeners that are under the age of 15 at this point, which is cool. Welcome, kids. And apparently, we're making references that they no longer understand. Like, for example, I'm going to take the last minute of the podcast here to explain what a check is, and also for the penny pitch, the phrase penny pitcher, which we are also saying to Mark
Oh
Anthony.
yeah,
So, penny. First of all, checks are something that used to be written and still are by older folks that are boomers or over the age of 40. They still write checks to to pay for things, possibly the rent or to the electric company or what.
yeah,
So again, you mean if you're on, you probably will never write a check in your life, but that's what that means. Also, penny pinchers, there used to be these little things, and after this podcast, they're going to be no longer. They used to be called pennies. They were little copper, about little circular items that people would actually use for the exchange of goods. Now, you will no longer have to deal with those. Apparently, going forward, the federal government is no longer printing them. But
yeah.
just so you
They are
know that.
officially done. I saw that.
So some of our references.
Apparently, it's saving the government quite a bit of money to no longer mint pennies. I did not know
Yeah,
that.
and I guess the nickels next, so that's even more expensive. But anyway, yeah. So for all of you who didn't know what checks or pennies were, we have to kind of explain. And again, you guys have AI or Google at your disposal in your hand or pocket. So I'm sure if we make any reference you don't get, go ahead and take the extra 30 seconds out and try to figure out what the heck we're talking about. But anyway, enough being cheap. Let's go all in, Mark. Let's have a nice Christmas season. Add some. I really just feel that this team is one big stroke, one big addition away now with Woody coming back from really being a truly championship caliber team. I think we're just that
Yeah,
one piece. We're literally, I mean, our whole bullpen's coming back. Everyone's coming back. I mean, and now, so I mean, we had a
we
great team last year, and we're all back. So I think that we add one big piece, one big bat of some sort. I really feel that we're really going to be a championship caliber team once again in 2026.
agree, Craig. This is the team that had the best record in baseball last year, and this is the team that went to the NLCS, and this is the team that did that with a very young, inexperienced rotation for the most part. So I think that now with that additional experience, balanced at the top with some real veteran guys who not only are veterans but have a ton of leadership and talent. If you bring in that one bat, to me, that makes all the difference. This lineup just needs some power. I think that Jefferson Cuero is going to be our backup catcher next year. Just really quick to your prior point on Danny Jansen. I know that we were not at the press conference, so we should have been with our colleagues, but Matt Arnold had talked about, he pretty much said that Jefferson Cuero was ready to come up to the major league. So I think that it's going to be Cuero as Contreras' backup next season. So maybe that'll be.
We'll talk about
kind of
that.
an
I have thoughts on
boost.
that, but we'll say that for the next podcast.
Yeah.
He is a great player in our organization and a top 5 prospect.
Yeah.
In our top 30. So yeah, absolutely. But all right, yeah. So once again, stay classy. Make sure to check out our Twitter and all that stuff. And
yeah, Brook Review 1 at Twitter is our handle. You can also send us an email, which maybe the kids are too young to know about as well. But Brew Crew Review Podcast with an S at gmail.com is our email address. Thanks to Scotty and to Chad for all their work on this episode. Scotty will get to those emails, I'm sure, before the next show.
Absolutely. So, all right. And maybe sometime this off season, we can have my nephew, a big fan, one of our biggest listeners, Alex, on the show. I'm sure he'd love to call in and give his insight. So yeah, hopefully we've got all that coming up for you this off season. But yeah, hot stove season. It's an exciting time in baseball. So let the signings begin. The Brewers won't be taking part of that, but most likely. But again, if Pete Alonso is on the docket for Christmas or Thanksgiving, then that would be pretty exciting. We'll come at you with a podcast. If we sign Pete Alonso will be on the podcast the next day, so for you. But anyway.
Oh no, we'll break it live. We'll break it live at the studio in West Dallas for sure.
That's right. We haven't had a live breaking news signing since the Brewers traded for, I think, was it who was the catcher? Johnny Peralta?
Johnny Estrada, man, for
Johnny
Doug
Estrada,
Davis.
that's right.
Yeah, for Doug Davis, and we also got Greg Aquino. It was a big trade. Claudio Vargas was a big one.
Yeah, and back in the age of checks, I remember him getting according to TC and some of our inside, he would get and cash multiple checks in the Milwaukee Brewers. So yeah, that's pretty cool. But anyway, all right, well, stay classy.
My wife also laughed that I even have a checkbook, just for what it's worth. Like the fact that we even have a checkbook that existed prior to our marriage. She was like, "Why would we need one of those?" And I said, "Well, fair point." So I'm being brought up to speed.
No, exactly. So that's awesome. So all right, well, stay classy, Chicago, and go Brewers.
All right. Thanks, Craig. Thanks, guys. Go Brewers.